Hello, everyone, and welcome to Wisdom Seeker Live podcast. Glad to have everyone join us that would like to today, and we're going to have some interesting discussion and seeking wisdom today. But as always, we like to start off with explaining wisdom from the podcast perspective. And wisdom's a journey. It's a three-step process, if you will. Starts with gaining knowledge, and we gain knowledge different ways: formal, informal, and purposeful, accidentally, whatever. And hopefully, we all seek to uh, get knowledge on a daily basis. I know I seek out every day to learn something new and try to gain information on an ongoing basis. And then the second step in that process, and by the way, knowledge is not where our power is. Knowledge is a great start, but it's only the beginning. If we stop there, we're missing an awful lot. So the second step in that process is to gain understanding. And understanding is where we begin to take the knowledge we gain and begin to apply it, begin to use it to make choices, find solutions, move forward, and personalize that knowledge to our life. Some would call that experience, and it's a good way to describe it. But that's the second step in the process or journey towards wisdom. But we still, at that point, haven't gained wisdom. And so the next step in the process is where we are then purposely making a leap to wisdom. And I say leap because quite often a lot of people just don't ever make that step, or they stumble into it a little bit and but still lack what the potential of having wisdom. And what wisdom is that you begin to see things from a much bigger perspective. You begin to see life beyond the moment. You begin to see life beyond just how it affects you and how it impacts others in the world around you. And so it's a much bigger perspective and helps us to begin to get better context for what we're doing and what's going on and our choices. And for those of us that have a bit of a spiritual bent, way we like to kind of say it or characterize it is that we begin to see things through God's eyes and begin to have that greater lens of understanding. And in the case of those of us, again, with a spiritual bent, is that perspective includes seeing things from a love perspective. So that's what we talk about when we're talking about seeking wisdom. We want to make that process happen, and it's something if we're purposeful and choose to do so, makes a huge difference in our choices and how we behave and what our expectations are and so on. And before we get into the topic for today, I've got to share a little bit. I posted about this before, but I am one of 17 co-authors that have been part of a book that's been published. And this book is about our journey through life as men and how we have grown to begin to overcome life's issues and live beyond or above or however you would like to characterize it, the norm for men today. And this book, and here's a copy of it. I finally got my copy in the mail and am looking forward to not only having heard the stories from the other authors, but to begin to read them and learn myself from it. So I just wanted to share that. And if there's anyone interested in getting a copy of the book, you can get a copy directly from me, and it will be cheaper than the Amazon price. But if you prefer, you can order it off of Amazon currently. and I hope that you'll consider it. And it was a great honor working with Brenda Dempsey and the team to get the book out. And I'm excited, hoping that our stories are going to impact people's lives. So just thank you for letting me have that moment to share about that. Be watching here on LinkedIn for additional information about how to get a copy of the book for yourself, and reach out to me directly through direct message if any of you would like to have me come visit your group and maybe talk about what's in the book. So welcome, Lydia and Patsy and Matthew and Eunice. Glad to have you all this morning. And today we're going to visit a topic that we have visited many times before, but it's worth revisiting because it's not a static topic, and it's about wisdom in regards to education choices. And the education world is an ever-evolving area. In some ways it is still stuck, and we've got some challenges. And I think that as parents, grandparents, friends of people that have children and so on, we do well to gain some wisdom and insight into the area of education and those choices, because they have become such a pivotal part in our world today. And the everything going on in regards to it, and the way we make choices in regards to education becomes an even bigger, more important thing for lots of reasons. Welcome, Professor Jagdish, and Eunice, thank you for congratulations on the book. It's been real exciting to be a part of, and I hope that we're going to get to release a video that we recorded about the book, hearing from all of us involved as authors of the book. And so be watching. Hopefully we can share that in the future. So this thing about education has consumed our world. It has consumed how we even behave in making choices. It has gotten to a point of importance, whether real or not, of impacting people's lives in just remarkable ways. Financially, mentally, emotionally, socially, it is just become such an pivotal part, in fact, to a point that there are those that would say that education is a basic human right. And we won't delve into that too much, but again, I think we have elevated education, formal education. Please let me clarify. I'm talking about formal education, where someone attends an institution of education, usually brick and mortar, sitting in classrooms and so on. And that's when I'm referring to education, that is what I'm referring to. Education has a broader meaning, but for our discussion, just want to frame that as part of it. And then one of the other comments that I have to make is that on the whole, and this is not just a U.S. problem, this is a worldwide problem, is that we have a lot of broken education systems and processes. And it has become a point where the education, in my opinion, is more about the system or the settings, and even about the money, than it is about preparing us, young people in particular, to be ready and to learn and make better choices. And so we really got to be cautious in regards to education choices, because they impact everyone so much in a lot of different ways. And Eunice makes a comment, and she says, education must not simply teach work, it must teach life. See, the challenge is that education should be an outgrowth of our homes and our families. It should be a supplement to the processes that are involved in the learning and growth, like Eunice talked about life and beginning to deal with life. And unfortunately, much of education, again, remember, I'm talking about the formal academic system where you attend classes and so on. Much of that has become about production of people through and gaining degrees or recognitions or whatever. And it is not about the making wise choices in our lives and learning how to function well in the current world. And it's a huge problem. And the dynamic that is coming along and how it is changing is even more remarkable. And many people, parents, grandparents, family, friends, and so on, are ill-informed about what is going on in our education system. The ones that have become more informed are really starting to question and challenge and consider alternate perspectives in regards to those choices. And let's see, Professor Jagdish makes a comment. Let's see here. He says, Eunice, nice comment. Education should not be confused with what we learn in schools and colleges. One keeps learning throughout life. Indeed. And Professor, that is a very salient statement that we, in fact, I even have a saying that unfortunately we have, in my estimation, we have jailed at learning in the form of formal education. We have so narrowed it that somehow the only process that happens is in formal academic settings. And that causes a lot of people to not, as you've expressed, learn throughout life, because they have come to expect that as if they have reached this recognition level or this degree or whatever, that they are now know what all there is to know in regards to whatever the topic that they have been educated in. And that's an unfortunate part of the brokenness of the system we live in. We have put learning in an education jail. Welcome, Kaneen. I hope I am pronouncing your name correctly, from Uganda. Glad to have you with us. But education, as we have it today, is got a number of issues that we have to address. One of them is misalignment. Okay, the focus of formal education has become about earning degrees. And quite often it is not aligned with the priorities or the need or the available opportunities for the workforce. In other words, we've got people getting educations that do not contribute to them getting meaningful employment opportunities, just not an opportunity to earn a way or have a way to earn a living. And it's becoming a bigger problem all the time. And as the system continues to focus in on formal education and degree seeking and so on, it becomes a greater problem, because the amount of need for people that have degrees or education leading to degrees is not changed a whole lot, and it is a smaller part of what is the workforce opportunity that's out there. And it is just a real challenge. Now, fortunately, there are some bright spots in it. One of the bright spots is one that I'm very fortunate to be involved with. It's called International Institute of Influencers, and I'm very fortunate to be part of the leadership team. And our vision is humanization of education, because much of education has become more about production and big business. Lots and lots of money in formal education, and it is creating challenges. It's causing the system that we live with to not be responsive to the needs of the education or the people being educated, or to being responsive to those that provide the jobs for these people. And so it's a real challenge that we need to be aware of. In fact, if you're a parent or grandparent of a young person right now, one of the last things on so many levels that you need to even consider is making a post-secondary formal education in the form of college or university a default answer for your young person. It is not a good idea. And so it is just a real problem. So let me get to some comments from the audience, because those are always important. By the way, welcome, Jeremy. Glad to have you. Comment by Kaneen. And his comment is, most especially in Uganda, cause the education system is bad due to corruption. Yes, unfortunately, because of the big business nature of education now, corruption has found its way into it, and we see those influences occurring as a result of, or examples of, where people are using money to buy education status, or to pay money for results on tests. And that is a bad place for us to be when those kinds of things are happening. And the other thing that I like to mention and needs to be aware is that we have a misperception, and that is that somehow we've associated education with making people better. And that is simply not true. Education makes some more educated, but it does not make people better, as we see evidenced by the behavior of people that are highly educated and do very bad, wrong things, even though they have very high education. Welcome, Razim. Glad to have you with us. So again, we've just got to be aware as parents and grandparents and influencers of children's direction. We've got to be keenly aware and make sure that we do not point them in wrong directions, because, by the way, our current education systems, in most cases, there are exceptions in some parts of the world, are all pointed to and have a priority that every young person has to be successful, has to go from a secondary or K-12 system, or some would say primary education system, directly into the next level and be involved in formal education beyond that first level. And that is where the money is being invested. That is where the priority is placed. And it just is a real challenge. And we need, if we're going to be wise in our choices about this, we really must be wiser in our approach. We need to have that much bigger perspective than just knowledge is power kind of thing, and that education in the form of degrees sets us up for life. Welcome, Z. Glad to have you with us today. So again, let's get back to comments, because your comments are salient and a part of how we will gain wisdom. And Matthew says, it's absolutely broken, but I have great hope that the likes of Khan Institute and the work of Imad Mostak, apologize if I'm mispronounced, with AI are going to change the system for better radically. And we learn more into our we lean more into our humanists and ethics in the arts as the best form of education, not just titles and degrees by rote. And thank you for that comment, Matthew. It is a real challenge. And I appreciate, by the way, I am a formally trained educator. I'm not currently carrying my state licensing because it's not where I'm functioning right now, but I've been trained, and I've actually been a teacher trainer. And I wanted to kind of cue in on something Matthew mentions, and that's degrees by rote. One of the sad things about our current education system is that it has become a production system, and it's based on gathering facts and figures, and then demonstrating through the lowest level of assessment in the form of written test to determine whether we have learned or not. And it's based quite often, mostly in rote process. For those that don't know, rote process is just memorizing. And if you study pedagogy and education processes, you know that rote memory is probably the least effective in retaining what you learn. So again, a problem inherent in the system. And it is just such a shame that it's that way. Lydia makes a comment, says, embrace education with clarity, truth, humility, and resilience in the process of application to impact and illuminate lights towards humanity. Again, thank you for the comment, Lydia. And education, what I would offer a little adjustment to your comment is embrace learning, because it used to be that education was primarily about learning, and education is not primarily about learning now. There are other priorities present in the current system, and learning is not always the priority. But indeed, we need to embrace learning with clarity, truth, humility, so character. And another key point that you bring out, Lydia, is application. Problem with the broken education system today is it's not about application. It's about passing some tests. It's about gaining a degree. In fact, its effectiveness in preparing young people for their being productive in life is more and more limited. If you talk to business owners and they can tell you that even people that have attained the level of degree or recognition still aren't prepared. They have the education, but they don't have the application that Lydia mentions. And so, yeah, it's a real challenge. And those of us out here that are trying to be a voice for this really need to continue being a voice for this, and really making it a priority, not for our sake necessarily, but for the sake of our young people. As a former teacher and being a part of the system at one point, and not just as a teacher, but in the nonprofit education world, I've seen what it is the current system is doing to our young people, and it breaks my heart. And in some ways, it makes me angry because of the nature of it. And let's see, Matthew makes a comment, says the future of work is in for radical change, and so will the future of education. Yes, the work environment is changing on a moment by moment basis, and the education system is not designed to respond and react to those changes. It's not, as the saying goes, it's not agile, not at all. And it is just not designed that way. And the priority in it is not to be responsive to the need outside of education. It has become its own end, when in reality it never has or should have been intended to be an end in itself. It's a way or a means to preparing for life. And again, it should just be, rather than the main way of preparing for life, it should be a support or an add-on to the home, which is where we truly should be preparing for life. Because again, if we're working in that fashion, we are able to keep the human perspective and some of the uniqueness involved. And so very, very important to really be aware. Professor Jagdish has a comment, says, very correct. Humanization of education is the urgent need of the hour. Education should prepare the learner not just for earning, but for living and for leading a meaningful life. Indeed, Professor Jagdish, it should be, again, a part of adding to the development that we should be experiencing outside of the education system. It should be more of a support, and it should be more of a piece to help us be lifelong learners. But that's not the priority that has become the education system. And it is quite sad and quite scary that it's the way it is. Let's see. Jeremy makes a comment, says it may be broke, yet it can be revamped so that it fixes a lot of the problems it has. Jeremy, I have been a proponent of repairing the current system for a number of years, and I've been voicing this as a parent, as a teacher, lots of levels. And yes, it is a possible way to possibly repair, but I'm getting more to a point that I'm concerned that it is going to be beyond a fix. It's going to be necessary. In fact, the word you use, revamped. In other words, we got to really overhaul what's there, because it has become so misaligned and so such a wrong priority as part of the design. Now, one thing I have to say, okay, and I want to make this very clear, having been a teacher, that my comments about the education system are not primarily directed at those that are in the classroom. Having been a teacher, having a family that are teachers, and knowing and living with lots of teachers, most teachers are very hardworking, very conscientious people. In fact, they are more hardworking than people want to acknowledge, and it's unfortunate. It even shows up in the form of the way teachers are paid. So just be clear, when I talk about the brokenness of the education system, I am not referring, generally speaking, to the frontline teachers that are trying their best to help our young people learn. So let me make that really, really clear. There are some teachers that are a problem, but generally not. Generally, teachers that are out there frontline are really hardworking, conscientious people that really have a passion to help young people learn. And they're trying to do it in a system that is not geared to support real learning. It's geared to producing people with titles and recognitions, whether they are valid or not. So I just want to make that clear, because again, having been a teacher, having lived with teachers, learned from teachers, working with teachers, most of them are very conscientious, hardworking, and they're really trying, in spite of the system that is there that does not really lend itself to encouraging and supporting the teachers. In fact, that's why you will see that we have another problem, and that is that we've got teachers that aren't staying in the classroom, and it is becoming a source of problems of its own, in that we are losing teachers and having trouble finding quality teachers because of the system that's there. And then Z offers a comment, says the current education system run with a conveyor belt mentality. Yes, production. It's about producing people that gain degrees, because it has become, unfortunately, one of the aspects of business that has been applied in education is about production and demonstrating value and worth through production. So many, people score good or score well on tests. So many people attain degrees, and it's just, again, it's not about the person. It's become about production and money, and it's a real challenge. Let's see. Matthew makes a comment. Says the astronomical cost of a degree has turned the American dream into a bit of a nightmare for a lot of families, has it not? Parents who pay off their mortgage are trapped in another mortgage with college fees. Yes, the cost is ridiculous. On average, just for information's sake, an education, even going to a state school, is really gotten to a point that it's going to cost for a bachelor's degree that someone spends 4 years to get it, around 100 to 120K, and that's expensive. And by the way, just a piece of information that you should be aware of is that's assuming that they do so in 4 years. The current data tells us that the majority of the young people will spend more like 5 to 6 years to get the degree, so the cost is even higher. And so, again, really considering the cost is a huge factor. And one of the byproducts of spending this money on these education degrees and so on is that now we have a lot of young people that are trying to pay off student debt, which is like carrying a mortgage, and they'll pay on it for 20 or 30 years, which means a lot of them are having to stay at home longer or look at less than real good conditions for living and so on. Or the pressure is to make money that is really beyond an intro level and so we're get pressures to raise minimum wages and stuff like that for theoretical resolution. Again, the broken nature of the system is remarkable. And Matthew has another comment, and that is, teachers are the bravest and noblest of people we have in the world today. I say that as a former teacher in a young offenders institution. Their pay should be doubled at least. I agree, Matthew. It is a real challenge. I think it was very eye-opening for me. I went out of business and industry into education, and I thought, well, I'll have more time off and less hours to make what the pay that is offered, which was again substandard. And what really boggled my mind is that, most of us on average will work about 2,000 hours a year, based on a 40-hour work week and 2 weeks vacation. And so about 2,000 hours. Well, as a teacher, to really be a good teacher, I was spending, even though my contract was considered a 10-month contract, so theoretically 2 months that I was not having to work, quote unquote. But I found that I was actually still, even under those conditions, investing almost the same amount of 2,000 hours of time and getting paid based on theoretically a 10-month contract. It's rather fascinating the way the system's set up. And so wisdom about the education is very important. And I'd like to share some thoughts on some information that I think a lot of people just simply aren't aware of, because there is a numbness or an assumption out there that the education system is fine and it is doing what needs to be done for our young people. So let me throw some statistics out there, and these are some that I have not only garnered from reading and studying, but also have observed the outcomes of this that lend support that it's accurate. First of all, in the U.S., and I'm not sure how close this is in other countries, but we have such a high attrition rate among those seeking education at a post-secondary or after high school, primary school, whatever level is remarkable. And that is that by the second year of students pursuing a college or university degree, by the end of the second year, about 70% of them have dropped out. And we complain in that in the K-12 or primary system that dropout is terrible. It is as bad or worse in the upper levels, and people don't talk about it, but it is a fact, and it is a scary fact because it's not being dealt with. It's not being faced, and it's sad. But you need to understand the probability of your young person completing a degree is small. The other piece of information, really be aware that the misalignment in what is needed to have the greatest opportunities in the workforce. Okay. We assume that most of the good jobs, quote unquote, in the workforce are for those that have degrees. Well, the reality is that that only about 30% of the job market even requires degrees. And again, that is a primarily based in a U.S. view, but I think it's still pretty broad in that the great majority of the jobs that are out there and that have need for people is not does not require degrees to get them. And so, excuse me, that means that we are putting a lot of our energy and effort into trying to prepare people for a smaller part of the work world, the job market. And it's unfortunate. And because what's happening is that those young people that don't get degrees in areas that have the strongest need are then in a situation that they're least qualified for the jobs they are looking for. And it creates a problem. So we, again, just be aware of what you're facing, what your young people are facing, and just don't assume that the default direction, default answer from an education standpoint for our young people is to proceed immediately out of secondary or initial education into a pursuit of a degree. It is just such a wrong perspective. And so that's one piece of information, is that we are sending or trying to send a lot of our young people prepared for a segment of the job market that is much smaller than the job market where they don't need a degree. And the other hideous thing that is a part of that is that a new development, a new change in the landscape that is going on is, we used to say, go get a degree. It can't hurt you. And that is not the case. Now, current market, current workforce, a degree can actually be proved to be harmful to a young person. And let me explain. By the way, what formal education that I have is in the area of HR. I never completed my bachelor's degree for various reasons, and practical nature of it, the time consuming because I was doing so as an adult, and then the lack of return on investment in having one. So anyway, what's happening in the work landscape is that we've got young people who have gone and gotten degrees. They've spent a lot of time, energy, money to get this degree, but they're not able to find jobs in the current workforce for the area that is requiring degrees. Remember, it's 30% or less of the job market requires degrees. So they've got this degree. It hasn't prepared them well, so they're the least qualified in that world because they're also competing against higher, more educated people for those jobs. And so they're not successful in finding a job in that arena. Then what happens is, so the next option for them to choose is to look at the other part of the job market, the 70%, the bigger part. And these jobs are technical or even areas in the medical world and arena. Of course, trade jobs. There are just so many different jobs in that sector that don't require a degree. And when a young person, current environment, takes their resume and goes to apply for this job, and it is seen that they have a degree, a common thought process, not to be difficult, but just the practicality of it, is that these young people are seen as overeducated and underqualified, because when you are or they are focused on a degree and getting that academic recognition, most of the time they do not invest time or priority in learning application, learning practical issues, learning problem solving, learning how to function with life and money and things like that. So unfortunately, a young person that goes and gets a degree, and especially if it's a non-specific degree, what's happening is that they are being looked at as overeducated and underqualified. Therefore, they are the least qualified for the biggest part of the job market. And it's really sad and unfortunate. And I what troubles me is I continue to see parents and grandparents and even social institution, churches, community centers, things like that, continue to push that the solution to young people's future is to go and get degrees and more formal education. And it simply is not always true. And in fact, is simply not true for the majority of young people. And what we're experiencing is a lot of young people that have invested, they're now in debt and they can't get a job. Or there's one other sector that I see as part of what I do now, is that we have a lot of people that have even earned degrees and they've been working, and they're so dissatisfied with their work that they're looking at changing roles. And that brings me to another statistic. What's very fascinating is that 70% of the people who have earned degrees are not even employed in a job that is directly using their education. And you say, so what? Well, the problem is most young people pursue a degree or education and trying to get to do something that they at least think they want to do that will bring satisfaction. The problem is most don't end up there. And as a result, they're working in a job situation that they are unhappy in, and go to the point of saying even miserable. And so it creates another set of problems, because there is not enough money out there in this world to pay anyone to be miserable a third of their or so of their life. And you can see people abandoning these jobs because of that very reason. And so let me address another piece of information that is out there that needs perspective, needs that broader, wiser picture to be considered. And that is that we tell our young people, well, if they just get degrees from higher education, that they're going to make more money on the whole than someone that does not have a degree. Okay, that is a message that is out there, that is pervasive, and unfortunately, it is driving young people's decision about education choices, and parents as well. But let me tell you a little more perspective. Let me give you that bigger picture on that data. What that's based on is a median view of a job. The two jobs, I believe, that are compared in attaining that data is that of someone with a bachelor's in business administration and an electrician. And that's looking at those two jobs based on current average wages and performance at a median level. That is where that is derived from. The problem is, and as we've talked about, first of all, a lot of degree-bearing people, because of various reasons, are not even content or happy or driven at a median level of performance. And therefore, the greater likelihood is that they're not going to be the best performers in that job that they have as part of that degree. Remember, 70% aren't even working in a place where their degree is targeted. So if you take that person with that degree and they are performing on the lower end of the scale in terms of satisfaction, production, and so on, and you take that same electrician who is really enjoying what they do, like what they do, feel good about what they do, and they really work hard and they produce well and all, and you compare the outcomes of earnings for those two situations, actually the earning numbers are opposite. And so this thing of telling a young person that if they go get a degree, they're going to earn more than others that don't have, there is a technical amount of truth to it, but it is based on a probability that is not necessarily accurate. And especially current environment is becoming less and less the case on a day by day, moment by moment basis. So just another piece of wisdom that as a parent, a grandparent, an aunt, uncle, just an influencer in the life of the young people that we really need to be aware of, so that we really are helping young people begin to make choices that are going to be beneficial and, by the way, hopefully encourage lifelong learning. So a couple of comments from the audience I want to get back to. Z says, since degrees are mass produced, the cost of a bachelor shouldn't be more than $20,000. At the workplace, a bachelor's now is being treated like a high school a few years ago. Yes, the level of practical learning and attainment that is a bachelor's degree is being equated with more like a high school diploma because of the ineffectiveness of it and the impractical nature of it that shows up. And so that is true. Welcome to Annis. Glad to have you with us. Let's see. Jeremy makes a comment. He says, what about those who have skills yet don't have degrees due to having to go into the workforce to survive and gain the skills and experience you cannot attend college? This is my opinion. A test like the ASVAB should be encouraged to take for both those who took colleges and those who haven't, so that businesses can see if they are at their strongest in applying for the position versus only wanting a degree. Yes, I hear your frustration, and I agree with you, Jeremy, that the challenge is being able to recognize skills through other means. And again, but I go back to reminding everyone that the jobs that are out there, the great majority, by 2/3 of the jobs don't require degrees to start with. And so that needs to be a basic consideration. And you mentioned the ASVAB. It's one of the better instruments. It's the Armed Services Vocational Aptitude Battery. What's really sad is that it's offered in high schools, generally in the U.S. anyway. The problem is when it is offered generally, it is offered the same time as the prep test for the SAT. And so many young people in that situation don't get a chance to take the ASVAB because they're being pushed to be preparing for the SAT for entrance into college. And one of the best things we can do to address all of this is, rather than making degrees pursuit the high priority of secondary education, is to make the primary focus of secondary education is effective functional literacy, and then present the young people with the many options that they have after secondary education. In fact, if we were to do education in the way that would really serve our young people best and serve our workforce and economy the best, we would understand that based on most standards, that by the time a young person reaches or attains a level of education of, at the latest, ninth grade, they are functionally literate to perform well in society and in work. And yet, what we do is we then take, after their eighth or ninth year, push them into further formal academic pursuit that is required to get into a college to get a degree, rather than saying, okay, if you're going to pursue a degree, this is what you need to do. They assume that everybody needs and will pursue a degree, and that's how the high school level education is prioritized. Whereas if we recognize that if we're being successful in the education system as it's designed, by the ninth grade, young people are functionally literate. In other words, they can read and write and even have math skills to function in the world as we have it today. And therefore, during their high school experience, if they are presented with all of the different options that are available after high school or after primary education, or however, what term, it varies by geography. But if they are given an opportunity then to begin to build on that foundation based on more on direction in their life, and they then begin to explore different types of work, different types of education beyond high school, because there are multiple types of educations out there that are available after high school, other than just going and getting a degree. And so there are just so many ways that this could be made better. But because education has become such a big business and so much about productivity, and to a point that even value as states or regions or whatever is based on SAT scores and things like that, ACT scores, and it's unfortunate. That should not give a picture of value or accomplishment among our young people. It's arcane. It is outdated. It is sad, but that's still what drives so much of education as we have it. So again, please, if you're a parent, if you're a young person, if you're a grandparent, or if you're an adult that influences other young people, do not approach the idea that it's the wisest move to assume attendance to a college or university to be the best choice for young people. And because we could talk more and more about the different aspects to it if we were to take the time. Maybe I even need to do a second edition on this to explain even more about what's going on, because it becomes a factor in how we make these choices. One alternate that we don't emphasize or consider for various reasons is that you can always pursue a degree at any point in life. So this idea that the only and best way to pursue a degree, if that becomes necessary, is to do so right out of high school is a very unwise and sad perspective. Let's see here. I want to make sure I've gotten all the comments in. Matthew makes another comment. Ahmed Mostak has educated 7 million refugee children in Malawi for free with his AI LLM, and has a lot to say about our outdated education system. So it is amazing what he's doing. Yes, we've got to get, and this is one of the quotes that's going to be in my next book, but we've got to get learning out of the jail that is education, because learning, if we truly help young people become learners, more than tying it into the education system, we will be doing them a great service. And it's just got to become an important part of the messaging. So thank you, everyone. Great comments. I appreciate your participation. I do want to remind you that if you're interested in this book that I'm a co-author of, reach out. Be watching for an opportunity to purchase those directly from me if you would like. I'm excited about the fact that myself and 16 other men have told their story of how to overcome and be a man of character in a world that is confusing about what being a man is, and to dare to be that strong man. So thank you. Thank you, everyone. And I think based on the time and comments and interest, that next week we will talk about education again and seek some more wisdom so that we can learn and prepare. Very important for the future of our young people, for the future of our world and our economy even. So thank you, everyone. God bless you. Have an amazing week. We will see you next week at 8 o'clock here with the Wisdom Seeker Live podcast. Take care.